ethics and impact of biotechnology. And the objective will be to understand the privacy issues of biotechnology, which is genetic engineering, and also the ethical issues that could be a possible problem in our society, okay, with this advancement that we have. Okay, so let's start. Now, I have a question. The question actually came from the book, and it's a great question, and it asks, should scientists be able to make any changes they wish to organisms? Should they be able to play the creator? Should they be allowed to change what they want? Or maybe to change based on what the customer wants. So let's say, for example, New. She gets married, I don't know, 10 years later, 20 years later, she gets married. And then she wants to start a family. And she does not want a natural baby. She wants a baby that has blue eyes. She wants the baby with green hair. She wants the baby with skin like a zebra. I don't know why she wants that. But let's say, for example, right? Now, can they do something like that today? I think they could with the right amount of money. When you do stuff like that, it's not a medical problem. It is a luxury. So it's kind of like cosmetic surgery or cosmetic or like things that you want to enhance yourself, right? So you got to have money. So my thinking is with the right amount of money, you can have your baby with blue eyes, green hair, with spotted skin, things like that. And if you look at the companies that are doing all this genetic engineering, most are private biotech companies. And they do it because of profit. That's what they're doing. It's about the money. It's about the money. That's what they're doing it. Now, it's not to say that it's bad. Genetic engineering is not bad because it has done a lot of good things for you and I. It has done a lot of good things for medicine. It has extended the human lifespan over time. Because if you look at human lifespan 50 years ago, if you lived to 80, that was very impressive. 1,000 years ago, if you lived to like 60 years old, that's pretty impressive. You got to have money or something. Because most likely you'd be dead. I'd be close to death, okay, if I live 1,000 years ago, okay? So there's a lot of good things out of biotechnology or genetic engineering. But there are negative things. Now, what if, one more thing I want to add is you realize the government has a database. It's a genetic database. And it's just like fingerprints. So every time you apply for a certain job, like kind of like me, before I applied for this job 20-something years ago, they sent me to this lab. And they got my fingerprints. They got my fingerprints, palm, all fingerprints. They call it live scan, okay? And then they sent it to the FBI. The FBI did a vetting on me. Vetting means they check my background. They check to see if I have any issues. You know what I mean? Issues, legal issues, mental issues, whatever issues. And then once I am clear, they send me through a program where they check to see if I'm mentally stable. Okay, if I'm mentally stable. Now, so the government has this database that's similar to DNA fingerprinting, but it's a genetic database. And every time you again apply for certain jobs, they check you and they add you to that database. All criminals, everyone who's ever in prison, or you're convicted of a felony or something like that, they take your DNA, they put it into this bank. And who is to say that thieves, companies, private companies that wants to make money, can they steal? Can they hack the DNA database and then check you? Can they check to see if David has issues? You see what I mean? If they know your DNA, they would know a lot of things about you. They would know your ethnic heritage. That means your race, your history, all the way back thousands of years. And then they also know about your disease. So let's say, for example, Nathan, he wants to play professional baseball one day. I do a DNA test on him, and I look at the database, and I see that he has a condition. He has a history of diabetes in his family, and he has a history of heart disease. at a very young age. Now he's very good at baseball, but would I sign a 10-year contract with Nathan? The answer is no. I'm biased. I discriminate against him because of his DNA. Guys, does that make sense? People, does that make sense? So DNA has done a lot of good things for our society. It has, I'll give you a list later on. Many, many good things. But it could be potentially be bad. And the book mentioned 3 areas. Number 1, ethnic heritage. Number 2, the chances of an individual developing a certain disease. If they know your disease, they're not going to hire you. And that's we have enough discrimination already. We don't want something extra. And then number 3, evidence for criminal cases. Evidence. They can take your DNA. They can do things that kind of like set you up. I'm not saying that it happens a lot. I'm saying that if they have your DNA, they can plant your DNA at some crime scene. You see what I mean? And they could say, oh, Israel was there. His DNA is here. You see what I mean? So that's a no-no, right? That's a no-no. So there are good and bad things. Now, what about food? What about the food that you and I consume that are genetically modified, right? We use CRISPR. Remember that CRISPR to create these crops that feed a lot of the developed world. Now, could it go bad? So there's a question in your book, and I'll read this to you, and it reads: are the foods from GM crops the same as those prepared from traditional bred crops? And how will this new area of research affect the environment? These GM or GMO crops, plants, fruits, could they destroy the agriculture? Could they destroy the environment? Could they destroy other species? Could they affect the ecosystem? No. The answer, I don't know. Other scientists, they don't know. They don't know. No one really knows because this is fairly new. GM, genetically modified food and plants, animals are fairly new. We don't know if something would go wrong, something that's going to pop up in 50 years, in 100 years, in 1,000 years. We don't know. So this is all up to speculation. That means we guess, okay? We guess. So what are the pros and cons of the good and the bad things? Now, I mentioned a few things to you. I said some of the good things about GM crops are you're able to grow a lot. So number 1, give you a more soothing color. Okay, number 1, you're able to improve your yield. Improve your yield means you're able to grow a lot more than usual. Instead of only 1,000 pounds, you can grow 10,000 pounds of a certain crop. Number 2, you could improve quality. So instead of, let's say, corn having a certain amount of nutrition, certain amount of protein, or let's say chickens having 5 grams of protein, so-and-so, or 20 grams of protein, you get more protein for the same amount of meat, for the same amount of crop, which is fantastic because our body, we need that stuff to maintain and to rid our body of sometimes defect. When we're sick, you need the nutrients to recover. Now, number 3, less need for pesticide and herbicides. Now, so if we grow these GM plants, crops, we add genes. These genes are going to produce the protein that creates an odor or maybe a taste that these plants, these bugs, they do not like. These weeds and bugs, they do not like. So if I'm a bug, an aphid, and I come across a plant that I usually eat, and I see that it has a smell, it smells like Febreze, for example, I don't want to eat it because I don't like the smell of Febreze. It's disgusting to me. So I move away to another plant. So that is what is meant by pesticide and herbicides. You don't have to use these anymore because you genetically engineered your crop to be resistant to these species. Number 4, could grow in poor soil and climates. Now, around the world, there's a lot of areas where I don't think they're lazy, although sometimes the media makes it seem like they're lazy and they sit around. I think overall humans, there's some lazy people. I'm not going to deny that. But I think the vast majority of people are not lazy. They're hardworking. And they happen to live in an area where the soil is no good. It's dry. The soil has a lot of rocks. The soil doesn't have the necessary nutrients. So genetically engineering these crops, you can grow in dry areas. These crops would require less water. They can survive in areas where it's a little windy, and they'll be okay. And so at least the people are able to grow crop and feed themselves and their family. Now you don't have to go far away, guys. You don't have to. You can go to, like, let's say, I have a cousin who lives in Corona, down the street, 40 minutes from here. Corona, up in the mountains. He tells me that he cannot grow any fruit trees, and I ask him why. Why can't you grow fruit trees? And he tells me it's too windy in Corona. And I said, then really? It's not that windy. Well, I don't live there, so I don't know. But he tells me you cannot grow fruit trees. You need a greenhouse to grow fruit trees in Corona. Grass is fine, but you cannot grow a lot of things in Corona. It's just windy. And this is only 45, half an hour drive away from here. And they have that problem. Imagine being in areas like Africa, people. The areas like, let's say, Mongolia. The Mongolian plain is flat. It's very windy. It's very hostile climate, and so you can't grow there. And so those are areas that I'm thinking of as I'm looking at number 4. Now, some of the cons, right? Some of the cons. Number 1, reducing genetic diversity. So if you genetically engineer your crops, that means that you pick the best genes to be in the plant. That means you're going to have less differences in the crop. Most of the crops will look the same. You know what I mean? It's going to be the same because you're going to use the same genes. Number 2, long-term effects unknown on animals and plants. Now, this is a question mark because we are assuming that these GM plants and animals are going to have problems later on. Number 3, effects on human of eating not known. Okay, effects on human. Yeah, this is another question mark. We don't know. We don't know if humans that eat a genetically modified food. I'm guilty of that. Most of us are guilty of that. Am I going to grow horns? Am I going to grow a horn like David to become a unicorn? Am I going to grow like a fin? My legs are going to become fins. I become a mermaid. I don't know, right? That is a question mark. Those are speculation. Speculation means you're guessing. Okay, you're guessing. And number 4, genes could spread to weed. Yes, that is a possibility. You put the gene into these crops, right? Into these crops. You put a gene into these crops. Weeds are plants that are highly aggressive. They grow everywhere. And so they could pick up the gene that is in the crop, the GM crop, and they become resistant. And they can start growing in the same area. So that's a possibility. That's a possibility. But still, that is still a big question mark, right? All the cons are big question marks. This, I agree 100%. But these are all question marks. Because we speculate. We assume that this is how it is. Now, what about these? These are not question marks. These are, yes, the real deal. It is happening right now. Because we know what we do. We know when we genetically modify our crops, our animals, our plants. Okay? Now, move on to the next idea. Now, some examples that the pros in your text, the pros of GMs is after 2 decades of growing and consuming GM foods, careful studies of such food have provided no scientific support for concern. That concern means you should worry. According to scientists, after 2 decades, guys, 20 years of testing, of research, they found no support, 0% support for danger in eating GM food. Now, maybe 20 years is not enough, guys. Maybe 40 years. Maybe 60 years. Maybe 80 years. Maybe 100 years. But we don't know. But as of today, it's been 20 years, and they've tested, and they found 0 concern. Zero. Okay? Now, what about the cons? Due to future uncertainty, because we don't know what the future holds. Even if GM food itself present no hazards, there are many serious concerns about the unintended consequences. Now, that is a big question mark. We don't know what the future is. We don't know. We just assume that consequence that a shift to the GM farming and ranching may have on agriculture. Only time will tell, right? Only time will tell. So the cons are mostly speculation, guesses. They're all guesses, mostly guesses. Okay, mostly guesses. And these are data, the recent data. We have a new textbook. Okay, let's move to the last. Now, so if you look at the last 20, 30 years, what have we done? We've done a lot of stuff, people. We have done a lot of things in genetics. An example, look at the GFP gene. This is called the green fluorescent protein, GFP, green fluorescent protein, right? Now, this gene, when it was first discovered in jellyfish, right? Jellyfish. They didn't know anything about it. They didn't know why it fluoresced. They didn't realize that it was a gene. They took that gene and they put it in the first plant. It was a fly. They put it in bacteria. They put it in a bacteria, B for bacteria. They put it into a fly, a fruit fly. Okay? They put it into a fly. They put it into a tobacco plant, cigarettes. They put it into tobacco, T for tobacco. So these are, let me let somebody in, guys. Okay, he's in. All right. So what they did is when they first discovered this gene in jellyfish, they didn't know. They put it into, they were successfully able to put it into bacteria, into a fly, in tobacco plants, tobacco, tobacco, okay? Tobacco. Now, fast forward. Today, it's in zebrafish. That's the zebrafish right here. That's the zebrafish. Look at it glow in the dark. We put it in mice. We put it in tadpole. Here's the tadpole. We put it in rabbits. We put it in even cats. The cat's right here. We put it in, the point is, more complex species. We're able to manipulate the genes because the genes, I know DNA is universal. That means that all living things have the exact same basic material that makes up DNA. We're all the same. It doesn't matter what species it is. But when you take a gene from a bacteria or from a jellyfish and you put it into more complex species, it's much more difficult. Therefore, it's much harder to clone humans than to clone, let's say mice or jellyfish or tadpoles or cats. Cats are easier because they're simpler. Humans, much more difficult. But you see the advances that what scientists have achieved in the last 20 years. They have been able to create these transgenic species, and it works. The animal survives, it survives. We don't know there's an effect, but they all survive. So having the ability to alter life for any purpose, either scientific or unscientific, does it justify doing so? Does it allow scientists to do all this stuff? Do you feel sorry for the cat, guys? Do you feel sorry for the cat glowing in the dark like this? I don't know. Is it hurting the cat? I don't know. I'm not the cat. I'm not going to add Mr. Cat if he's hurt. Am I going to add the tadpole? I'm going to ask the tadpole if he's hurt. Does it affect his reproduction? Does it affect the zebrafish? I don't know. But does this justify scientists for doing all this stuff? Again, we don't know. But if you think about science, people, the ultimate purpose of science is this. The goal of biology is to understand the nature of life, guys. Is to understand the nature of life and find ways to improve the nature of life. At the same time, to ensure that the tools of science has given us are used wisely. So ultimately, does all this stuff that we've been doing with genetics, does it improve life overall? Has it improved your life? Has it improved my life? Uh, I'll be honest. I think genetic engineering has improved my life. It has. Um, my mom had cancer 5 years ago. She had it for 5 years. I'm sure some genetic engineering was involved, and she recovered from her cancer, lymphoma, from all the medicine that she took and chemotherapy. So, do I help? Do I thank genetic engineering for this? Yes, I do. Okay, I do. But if she had cancer, let's say 100 years ago, she'd be dead by now. So what about the food that I consume? Yeah, I mean, a lot of the food that I consume are healthier, well, supposedly healthier. It has more nutrients. It has, the crops are better. The tomatoes last longer. The bananas are more nutritious. They're bigger and they stay ripe longer versus the natural banana. They ripe 2-3 days and they're done. They get soggy, soft. They turn black, brown and black, and I don't want to eat it anymore. You see? So has it benefit nature, genetic engineering? The answer is yes. I think it's yes. But am I going to have the same opinion in 50 years? I don't know. Maybe 100 years. Well, most likely I won't be. I'll be dead in 20. But you guys get the idea. If you guys will live another 50 years, most all of you will live another 50, 60, 70 years, right? 80 years maybe, 90 years maybe. Some of you maybe 100 years. Will your opinion be the same in 100 years once we learn more about this stuff? I don't know. So only time will tell. Only time will tell. Okay. Questions? This is lesson 4.